If you play games for the codex pages, the item descriptions, and the sense that the world existed long before you arrived, you probably want books with high lore density. Lore-heavy novels reward slow reading. They give you history, language texture, religions, factions, and competing versions of the same truth. In this guide, I use 3 practical lore types. Mythic lore feels like a sacred archive, like legends and chronicles written by insiders. System lore feels like rules, institutions, and ecology working together, so the setting behaves like a simulation. Archive lore feels like you are decoding a lost world from clues, where the author leaves gaps on purpose. The goal is not to memorize every name. The goal is to choose a book whose density matches your patience, and to give you a simple way to read without bouncing off. The 8 picks here are popular with gamers because they deliver different kinds of world depth. Some are clear and structured, some are intentionally opaque. All of them create the feeling that there is more world than you will ever see on the page, which is exactly what makes lore satisfying. The Silmarillion, J.R.R. Tolkien. This is for readers who want mythic scale and layered legend, like reading a franchise Bible written as ancient scripture. The tone is immersive, and the book trusts you to notice details without constant explanation. The lore density comes from compressed histories, genealogies, and tales that behave like primary sources from inside the world. You get names, lineages, institutions, and old events that are treated as normal background, which makes the setting feel old and independent of the plot. A practical way to start is to read it in short sessions, 1 chapter or story at a time, as if you are browsing lore entries. Let unfamiliar terms repeat a few times before you look anything up. The repetition is the teaching method. Track one simple thing as you go. Build a simple map of relationships. Who is related to whom? Which age or era you are in? What place name keeps returning? That is enough to make the text feel coherent. If you enjoyed other Middle-earth books, this feels like the deep history shelf behind them. If you have not read them, it can still work as mythology reading, but it is a different experience than a conventional fantasy novel. The one caution is simple. It is not structured like a modern novel. The pleasure is in myth texture, not in fast-forward motion. If that sounds appealing, it is one of the purest mythic lore books you can buy. Gardens of the Moon, Stephen Erickson. This is for readers who want maximum density and a continent that feels populated by real cultures and long-running conflicts. The tone is immersive, and the book trusts you to notice details without constant explanation. The lore density comes from implied backstory. You meet factions mid-game, with titles and magic systems already in motion, and you learn by watching how people behave. You get names, institutions, and old events that are treated as normal background, which makes the setting feel like it has been running for centuries. A practical way to start is to accept confusion early and focus on what each scene is doing emotionally. Take notes only on recurring proper nouns. Let unfamiliar terms repeat a few times before you look anything up. The repetition is the teaching method. Track 3 anchors: location, faction, and the kind of power being used. If you can track those, you can keep reading comfortably. Many readers find that the world suddenly becomes readable once the recurring titles and places settle into your memory. This is the opening of a larger series, but you can still treat it as a test drive for the style. If you like lore because it feels like being dropped into a living setting with its own politics and rules, this delivers. The one caution is important: it refuses to hold your hand. For many readers, that is the appeal, but it is a deliberate deep-end entry point. If you want gentler onboarding, start with a clearer system book first, then come back when you want the true immersion challenge. Dune, Frank Herbert. This is for readers who want a world that feels like a strategy game. Politics, ecology, and belief systems all matter. The tone is immersive, and the book trusts you to notice details without constant explanation. The lore density comes from interlocking systems. Social rules, economic pressures, and environmental constraints shape every decision, so the setting feels inevitable. You get institutions, ritual behavior, and technical vocabulary that is treated as normal background. That makes the world feel older than the moment you are reading. A practical way to start is to read the opening slowly and treat unfamiliar terms as world vocabulary. Let the book's matter-of-fact tone work on you. Let unfamiliar terms repeat a few times before you look anything up. The repetition is the teaching method. Track the core triangle: environment, power structure, and cultural ritual. When you track those 3, the rest becomes coherent. You do not need to remember every name. You need to understand what the world rewards and punishes. This is also a gateway to a bigger saga, but the first volume is widely read on its own. It is a reliable evergreen pick because it stays in print, and it has influenced decades of later world building. The one caution is about expectations. It is less about action pacing and more about how worlds operate. If you like lore because it explains why a society is the way it is, this lands hard and it feels satisfying in the same way a well-designed game world feels satisfying. The Way of Kings, Brandon Sanderson. This is for readers who want big, epic scale with clear craft and steady payoff. It feels like a huge campaign that stays readable. The tone is immersive, and the book trusts you to notice details without constant explanation. The lore density comes from careful layering. You get explicit world rules, deep history hints, and recurring symbols that signal an enormous timeline without dumping exposition. You get institutions, ranks, and cultural habits that are treated as normal background, which helps you build a stable mental map. A practical way to start is to commit to the first 100 pages as a calibration period. Use chapter breaks as checkpoints and trust the structure. Let unfamiliar terms repeat a few times before you look anything up. The repetition is the teaching method. Track two anchors: the physical environment and the social roles people cannot escape. Both are described consistently. That consistency is why this is a common recommendation for readers who want lore but do not want to feel lost. This is the opening of a long series. If you like the first book, you have a lot of runway. If you only want to sample the world, the first volume still delivers a strong sense of scope and rule-driven world building. The one caution is simple. The book is large and it earns its density over time. If you want instant codex-style density, start with a shorter pick like Dune or The Last Wish, then come back when you are ready for the longer commitment. The Name of the Wind, Patrick Rothfuss. This is for readers who want a richly textured culture where songs, sayings, trades, and academic life make the world feel inhabited. The tone is immersive, and the book trusts you to notice details without constant explanation. The lore density comes from daily life lore. The book builds density through routines, institutions, and the way people talk about art, money, and reputation. Instead of giving you a rulebook, it makes you feel how a society thinks and what it values. A practical way to start is to read for voice first. Let the storytelling carry you, then notice how casual details imply a whole society behind the scene. Let unfamiliar terms repeat a few times before you look anything up. The repetition is the teaching method. Track value signals. What is praised? What is mocked? What is taught? What is considered impressive? Those social signals are the lore, and they make the setting feel consistent and lived in. This is part of a larger series, but many readers enjoy the first book as an immersive standalone experience. It is also a good bridge for readers who want lore depth without the most extreme density or confusion. The one caution is about expectations. It is not a fast completion project. If you need closure quickly, treat it as an experience and pair it with a more self-contained lore pick like Dune or Hyperion. If you read it for atmosphere and texture, it delivers a strong gamer-friendly sense of world depth. Hyperion, Dan Simmons. This is for readers who want sci-fi lore that feels like multiple genres stitched into one coherent future history. The tone is immersive, and the book trusts you to notice details without constant explanation. The lore density comes from varied narrative forms and an implied timeline. You see different belief systems and technologies from different angles, so the world expands by accumulation. Institutions, customs, and future history references appear as normal background. That makes the universe feel large without constant explanation. A practical way to start is to treat each part as its own case file. Let the larger setting emerge from the overlap between perspectives. Let unfamiliar terms repeat a few times before you look anything up. The repetition is the teaching method. Track a timeline mindset. Ask yourself what seems older, what seems new, and which institutions keep appearing in different contexts. When the same concept shows up in a different voice, it becomes more real, like reading multiple in-world documents about the same era. This is part of a larger sequence, but the first book is frequently read as a strong entry point because it shows a lot of the world quickly. It is also a good pick if you want lore density without the single-style commitment of a massive epic. The one caution is structural. It is unusual. If you only like one continuous viewpoint, give it time to click. Many gamers end up loving it because it feels like unlocking a setting through multiple playable perspectives. The Shadow of the Torturer, Gene Wolfe. This is for readers who want archive lore and puzzle density, where the world is built through implication and strange normality. The tone is immersive, and the book trusts you to notice details without constant explanation. The lore density comes from oblique references and selective narration. The language feels classical, and the setting is hinted at through objects, customs, and titles. You often learn what the world is by noticing what is treated as ordinary. That is a high-density technique that many games use in environmental storytelling. A practical way to start is to read slowly and accept that you are decoding. Reread a page when a term feels important, because it usually is. Let unfamiliar terms repeat a few times before you look anything up. The repetition is the teaching method. Track concrete objects, tools, uniforms, ceremonies, and architecture. They often reveal more about the world than direct explanation would. Notice what people assume, what they fear, and what they call normal. Those assumptions are the lore. This is the opening of a larger series. It also stands out as a book that becomes richer with rereads, which is rare and valuable if you enjoy theory crafting. The one caution is clarity. This is not designed to be instantly transparent. If you want the author to explain everything, you may struggle. If you enjoy inference, ambiguity, and the feeling of uncovering a hidden setting, this can become one of the most satisfying lore experiences you will find. The Last Wish, Andrzej Sapkowski. This is for readers who want lore with momentum, folklore energy, regional rules, and monster manual texture without the feeling of homework. The tone is immersive, and the book trusts you to notice details without constant explanation. The lore density comes from short story structure that samples the world from several angles. Each piece implies history and politics without requiring a huge info dump. You learn local rules by watching how communities react, and that makes the world feel wide and varied. A practical way to start is to begin with one story and pause after it ends. Notice what it implies about law, superstition, and power. Let unfamiliar terms repeat a few times before you look anything up. The repetition is the teaching method. Track local rules. What counts as normal in a village? What people fear? What institutions step in when things go wrong? That local logic is the lore, and it is easy to absorb because it is grounded in small concrete situations. This is part of a larger saga, but many readers start here because it is approachable, and it still feels rich. It is also a good pick if you want to test whether you like the style before you commit to longer books. The one caution is tonal variety. Because it is a collection, the mood can shift between stories. That variety is part of the charm, and it makes this an excellent entry point for gamers who want lore flavor without the commitment of a 1,000-page epic. Here is a simple ladder that matches how many readers build tolerance for lore density. Start with The Last Wish if you want quick wins and strong flavor, and if you like lore that shows up through folklore, local rules, and short episodes. Next, move to Dune if you want system thinking, or to The Name of the Wind if you want culture and voice. Both deepen the world without requiring constant note-taking. After that, decide whether you prefer clarity or mystery. For clarity first epic density, go to The Way of Kings. It is long, but it explains its own rules with care and it rewards steady reading. When you feel ready for a true deep-end experience, try Gardens of the Moon. It trusts you to learn by immersion, the same way a complex game teaches you through play. For mythic archive density, go to the Silmarillion. For puzzle archive density, go to the Shadow of the Torturer. Both reward rereads and pattern noticing. For sci-fi lore that expands through variety, try Hyperion. It builds a future history by showing the same universe through different lenses. The key idea is simple: increase density one step at a time, and choose the type of lore that matches what you already love in games. When people say a book has great lore, they often mean different things, so your first pick should match the kind of density you enjoy. If you want the fastest entry with strong world flavor, pick The Last Wish. If you want a single classic that feels like a full world simulation, pick Dune. If you want modern epic scale with clear craft and a reliable sense of progression, pick The Way of Kings. If you want culture and voice, and you like the feeling of learning a society through routine details, pick The Name of the Wind. If you want the densest challenge on this list, and you enjoy being dropped into a world that will not translate itself, pick Gardens of the Moon. If you want the most puzzle-like experience, pick The Shadow of the Torturer. If you want mythic backstory, where the text feels like the source material behind a larger world, pick The Silmarillion. If you want sci-fi lore with a wide scope and a structure that keeps changing viewpoint and style, pick Hyperion. For the full spoiler-free breakdown of what each density type feels like and how to choose your next step without wasting time, watch the long video connected to these shorts. It uses the same slug, and it keeps the recommendations evergreen.